A single slip sent Alec Luhn crashing down a glacier, leaving him stranded for 6 days with a snapped leg, a fractured pelvis, no water, no phone, and a storm that nearly buried him alive. Everyone searching thought he was dead. But when the helicopter door finally opened, they saw a hand rise from the ice. Stay with me, because this story is not for the weak. The wilderness reveals who we are when everything else is stripped away. Alec Luhn was 34 years old when he walked into the Norwegian mountains in August 2022. An American journalist with bylines in The Guardian and the Moscow Times, he'd spent years covering climate change and environmental disasters. He understood risk. He'd reported from conflict zones and navigated political danger. But the wilderness operates by different rules. This was supposed to be a 4-day solo hike through Folgefonna National Park in western Norway, a region where glaciers carve through ancient rock and valleys plunge into mist. Luhn was experienced. He knew how to read weather, pack for isolation, and respect the mountains. He'd done trips like this before, alone, moving through landscape that demanded attention and rewarded solitude. But Folgefonna is not forgiving country. This is a landscape of contradictions, beautiful and brutal, serene and savage. Glaciers flow like frozen rivers between peaks. Weather systems roll in from the North Atlantic without warning, turning clear skies into whiteout conditions in minutes. The terrain shifts from alpine meadow to ice field to sheer cliff face with little transition. Trails fade, landmarks disappear in fog. Cell service is a fantasy. It's the kind of place where a single mistake can spiral into catastrophe. On August 18th, 2022, Alec Luhn entered the mountains. He packed carefully: food for 4 days, water purification tablets, sleeping bag, rain gear, first aid kit, his phone fully charged. He told friends his rough itinerary. He planned to check in when he returned to civilization. He would not walk out. What happened over the next 6 days would test every limit of human endurance. It would reduce survival to its most primitive elements: shelter, water, warmth, and the psychological warfare of isolation. This is the story of how Alec Luhn fell into a glacier and clawed his way back to life. Day 1 began with optimism and strong legs. Alec entered Folgefonna National Park from the east, moving through terrain that alternated between rocky trails and open tundra. The August weather was mild, almost pleasant. Sunlight illuminated the massive ice field that gives the park its name. Folgefonna Glacier stretches across nearly 80 square miles, a remnant of the last ice age, still active, still dangerous. The trail was barely marked. This wasn't a maintained tourist path. This was wilderness navigation. Following cairns, reading topography, trusting instincts when the route became ambiguous. Alec moved with the confidence of someone who understood that solo hiking demands constant awareness. But something was wrong with his boots. The soles were beginning to separate from the leather. Not catastrophically, not yet, but enough to notice. The kind of equipment failure that's annoying in a parking lot and potentially deadly in remote terrain. Each step risked the sole peeling further. Each hour wore the bond between rubber and leather thinner. He should have turned back. He didn't. This is how disaster begins, not with dramatic failure, but with small compromises. The weather looks okay for now. The boots will probably hold. I've come this far already. I can make it work. Alec pushed deeper into the park. The terrain grew more technical. What began as hiking became scrambling, using hands to navigate steep sections, picking routes across boulder fields, skirting the edges of ice flows where meltwater carved channels into ancient rock. This is where the glacier truly dominates. It grinds rock to powder. It creates crevasses that drop into blue darkness. It covers unstable ground with deceptive snowfields that can give way without warning. By the second day, Alec was deep in the backcountry. The weather began to shift. Not dramatically, just a change in the wind, a thickness in the air, the kind of atmospheric pressure that makes experienced mountaineers check their gear and consider retreat. Clouds gathered over the peaks. The temperature dropped. He made camp that night in a small depression between rocks, sheltered from wind, but exposed to the vastness of the landscape. Silence pressed in from all directions. No voices, no engines, no sign of human presence, just the occasional crack of ice shifting somewhere in the darkness. This is the isolation that draws some people to the wilderness, the sense of being truly alone. But isolation has a darker side. Out here, there is no backup plan, no safety net. If something goes wrong, you solve it yourself or you die trying. Alec's phone had no signal. He hadn't expected any. On the morning of August 20th, day 3, he broke camp and continued northwest, moving parallel to the glacier's edge. The boot sole was worse now, peeling more with each mile. He compensated, adjusting his gait, placing his feet more carefully on unstable surfaces. The terrain narrowed. Ahead, the route followed a steep slope where rock met ice, a transition zone where solid ground gives way to the glacier's frozen mass. This is technical ground. Every step matters. Balance is everything. The weather deteriorated. Wind picked up. A cold mist rolled across the ice field, reducing visibility. What had been challenging but manageable was becoming something else, something that demanded absolute focus. Alec moved carefully along the slope. His damaged boot caught on a rock, and everything changed. The slip happened in an instant. One moment, Alec was navigating steep terrain where ice met rock, placing each step with deliberate care. The next, his compromised boot sole twisted against stone. His balance failed, and gravity took control. He fell. Not off a cliff, not at first. He fell onto a steep slope of ice and rock, angled at maybe 45 degrees, slick with meltwater and scattered debris. His body immediately began to slide, accelerating down the glacier's edge with nothing to grab, nothing to arrest the fall. 70 feet of uncontrolled descent. His body slammed into rocks. Bones cracked with sounds he could feel more than hear. Ice tore at his clothing. He tumbled, unable to stop, each impact driving air from his lungs and sending fresh waves of agony through his frame. The world became a blur of white ice, gray rock, and red pain. Then he stopped. Not gently, not safely. He stopped because the slope finally leveled out into a small depression, a hollow carved by meltwater, partially sheltered by ice walls, completely invisible from the route above. For several seconds, Alec couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but process the overwhelming cascade of pain. His left leg was wrong, completely wrong. The femur, the strongest bone in the human body, had snapped. He could feel the break, feel the grinding instability when he tried to shift his weight. Fracture patterns radiated through his pelvis. Something in his spine had cracked during one of the impacts. He tried to stand. His leg collapsed beneath him. He tried again. Same result. Just more pain, more damage. This was the moment Alec Luhn understood he was in catastrophic trouble. His backpack was gone, torn from his shoulders during the fall, scattered somewhere up the slope, or lost entirely. With it, most of his food, his sleeping bag, his first aid kit, his water purification tablets. His phone was still in his pocket, but the screen was shattered, the device unresponsive. No signal anyway, not out here. He took inventory of what remained. One water bottle, half full, maybe 16 ounces. Some energy bars in his jacket pocket, a rain shell, his broken body, and the growing realization that no one knew exactly where he was. The weather worsened. The mist thickened into proper rain, cold, wind-driven, the kind that steals body heat with brutal efficiency. Within minutes, Alec was soaking wet. His core temperature began to drop. He looked up at the slope he'd fallen from. 70 feet. Steep ice and rock. Impossible to climb even with working legs. Impossible to descend further without risking another fall, potentially fatal this time. He was trapped. The depression where he'd landed was perhaps 20 feet across, a shallow bowl carved into the glacier's edge, surrounded by ice walls on 3 sides and steep, unstable terrain on the 4th. Protected from the worst wind, but completely exposed to precipitation. No way out. No way to signal. No way to move. Alec screamed for help. The sound echoed off ice and rock, then vanished into the vast indifference of the wilderness. No response, no rescuers, no hikers, no helicopters, just wind and rain, and the slow, steady drip of melt water. He screamed again and again. Nothing. This is the arithmetic of wilderness disaster. Distance plus isolation plus injury equals a very simple equation. Either someone finds you or you die. Alec pulled himself into the most sheltered corner of the depression, dragging his shattered leg across rock and ice. Every movement was agony. Every shift of weight sent fresh fractures grinding against each other. But staying exposed to the rain meant hypothermia, and hypothermia meant death. The survival clock had started. Day 1 of 6. Night was coming. The temperature would drop. He had no sleeping bag, no tent, no way to stay warm except his rain jacket and the calories from a few energy bars. His water, 16 ounces, would not last long. Dehydration would set in within days. Alec Luhn understood what was happening. This was not a situation where rescue would arrive quickly. This was survival measured in days, not hours. This was a test of how long a human body can endure when everything goes wrong at once. The rain intensified. Darkness settled over the glacier. And somewhere far above, the trail he had been hiking remained empty. No footprints, no witnesses, no one who could report that a hiker had fallen, that someone needed help, that time was running out. Alec was utterly, completely alone. The first rule of wilderness survival is simple: shelter, water, warmth, food, in that order. Alec had none of them. The rain fell harder as darkness consumed the glacier, temperature dropping, wind accelerating. Hypothermia does not announce itself with dramatic symptoms. It creeps in through small compromises, shivering that will not stop, thoughts that slow and blur, coordination that degrades. Alec needed shelter. His tent was somewhere up the slope with the rest of his scattered gear. He needed anything that would break the wind. He had his rain jacket, that was it. Using his arms, he dragged himself deeper into the corner, where an overhang of ice provided minimal protection. Every movement sent fresh agony through his shattered leg. The femur ground against itself. The pelvic fractures shifted, but stopping meant dying. So he moved. It took 20 minutes to travel 8 feet. He positioned himself against the ice wall, his broken leg extended awkwardly in front of him. The irony was not lost, using ice as shelter from cold. But the overhang blocked some rain, and the wall broke the worst wind. It was not good. It was not enough. But it was something. His hands were losing sensation. Water had soaked through his base layers. His core temperature was dropping. The shivering started. Violent, uncontrollable spasms. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out what remained of his supplies. 3 energy bars, maybe 600 calories total. 1 water bottle, half full, 16 ounces, no purification tablets, no way to safely drink from the meltwater around him. He did the math. The human body can survive weeks without food. But water? 3 days, maybe 4, in cool conditions. Less if you are injured, stressed, losing heat. Dehydration would shut down his kidneys. His organs would begin to fail. 16 ounces would not last. Alec took 1 small sip, just enough to wet his mouth. He forced himself to stop. Rationing started now. 1 sip every few hours. Buy time for rescue, if rescue was coming. The shock was wearing off, replaced by something worse. Full awareness. His mind began running scenarios. Best case, someone noticed he missed his check-in. They would find him tomorrow, maybe the day after. Worst case, no one knew exactly where he was. The search area was massive. Weather would delay operations. By then, he pushed the thought away. Focus on what you can control. Stay warm. Ration water. Stay conscious. Stay alive. The night deepened. The temperature continued to drop. The wind howled across the glacier above, carrying sounds that weren't quite natural. Ice groaning, rocks shifting, the distant boom of calving ice. Alec's leg throbbed with each heartbeat. Pain and cold made sleep impossible. Every time his eyes closed, a fresh shiver would shake him awake. So he stayed awake, listening to the storm, feeling his body temperature drop, calculating how long he could last. Dawn revealed a landscape transformed. Fresh snow dusted the higher elevations. Beautiful, deadly. The depression where he'd landed was smaller than he'd thought, barely large enough to lie down in. The ice walls rose 10 to 12 feet on 3 sides. The 4th side opened onto the steep slope he'd fallen from, too treacherous to climb. He was in a natural prison. His broken leg had swollen overnight. The skin was discolored, stretched tight over accumulated fluid. He ate half an energy bar, took 2 small sips of water. 14 ounces left. Day 2 was beginning, and the storm was about to get much worse. The weather broke on the afternoon of day 2. Not in a good way. Alec watched the clouds build. They rolled in from the west, dark and heavy, moving fast. The wind picked up first, gusts that howled through the mountains. Then the temperature dropped again. Within an hour, the storm hit. This wasn't steady rain. This was a North Atlantic weather system in full fury. Freezing rain mixed with sleet, driven horizontal by screaming winds. The ice walls became wind tunnels, channeling the storm directly into his refuge. There was nowhere to hide. Alec pulled his rain jacket hood tight and curled into the smallest profile possible. The frozen rain stung like needles. Within minutes, he was drenched again. His core temperature plummeted. The shivering became violent, his entire body convulsing. His jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. His hands curled into useless claws. This is severe hypothermia approaching. The point where judgment fails and people make fatal decisions. Alec forced himself to think. Water. He needed water. The freezing rain was collecting in small pools throughout the depression. Runoff from the ice walls, not clean, not pure, probably contaminated. But he was out of options. His water bottle was empty. The 16 ounces were gone. Dehydration was setting in. He could feel it in the thickness of his tongue, the way his thoughts moved through mud, the growing headache. Using numb hands, Alec scooped freezing water from a shallow pool and brought it to his lips. It tasted of stone and ice and something metallic. He drank anyway. The storm raged for hours. Day turned to night with barely any change in the darkness. Visibility dropped to nearly zero. His mind started to slip. How long has it been? 2 days? 3? No one is coming. This is where I die. He caught himself, forced the thoughts back. Dying was easy. Staying alive required focus. On day 3, desperation set in. The storm had passed, leaving fresh snow and brutally clear skies. Beautiful, fatal. His water was running low again. The pools were freezing solid, and then his body began demanding hydration he couldn't provide. Alec stared at his empty water bottle, then at the yellow snow beside him. No, he couldn't. But thirst is a primal drive. It overrides disgust. It overrides reason. When your kidneys are beginning to shut down, morality becomes negotiable. On the afternoon of day 3, Alec drank his own urine. Not all of it, just a few mouthfuls, enough to stave off complete renal failure. His stomach heaved, but he kept it down. This is what survival demands. Not heroism, not dignity, just the willingness to do whatever it takes. His last energy bar was gone. His body was beginning to consume itself, breaking down muscle tissue for energy. He needed calories. Around him, sparse vegetation clung to life between rocks, tough alpine grasses. Alec began pulling up grass and chewing it. It provided almost no nutritional value, but it gave his mouth something to do. Day 4 arrived with crushing silence. The storm was gone. The sky was impossibly blue. The glacier gleamed in sunlight that provided no warmth. His thoughts turned dark. This is where it ends. My body will freeze. They'll find me in spring, if they find me at all. But somewhere beneath the despair, something else persisted. Not hope exactly, but a stubborn refusal to quit. He wasn't dead yet. And as long as he wasn't dead, he would fight. While Alec Luhn was drinking urine and chewing grass on a Norwegian glacier, 4,000 miles away, people were beginning to worry. He had missed his flight home. On August 24th, day 5 of Alec's ordeal, Norwegian authorities were notified that an American hiker was overdue from a solo trek in Foljafana National Park. The search began. But the mountains don't make rescue easy. The search area was vast, hundreds of square miles. Alec had provided a rough itinerary, but solo hikers often deviate. The search zone was enormous, and the weather wasn't cooperating. High winds made helicopter operations dangerous. Fresh snow obscured tracks. Search teams mobilized, but conditions kept them grounded. Alec knew none of this. From his prison in the ice, all he knew was that 4 days had passed, and no one had found him. On the morning of day 5, he heard it. The distant thump of helicopter rotors. His heart rate spiked. Adrenaline flooded his system. This was rescue. The sound grew louder. The helicopter was sweeping the glacier, following a grid pattern. Alec tried to scream. His voice was hoarse from days of yelling, from dehydration, from cold. The sound that emerged was weak, pathetic. The helicopter wouldn't hear him. He needed to be seen. Frantically using numb hands that barely functioned, Alec searched through what remained. His rain jacket was dark gray, useless against snow and ice. Everything blended into rock and shadow. He needed something bright. His hiking pole, still attached to his pack strap, and stuffed in his jacket pocket, a red stuff sack, bright emergency red. With hands that could barely grip, Alec tied the red fabric to the hiking pole. Then, using every ounce of remaining strength, he wedged the pole upright between rocks, extending the red flag as high as possible. The helicopter passed overhead, close, maybe 200 feet up. He waved his arms, screamed until his voice gave out, stared up at salvation flying past. The helicopter continued on its path. It hadn't seen him. The depression that protected him from wind made him invisible from above. The ice walls blocked sight lines. His small red flag wasn't enough. The sound of rotors faded into the distance. Alec collapsed back against the ice wall, gasping, crying, shaking. They had been right there, and they had missed him. The helicopter returned twice more that day. Each time Alec waved and screamed and hoped. Each time it passed by without stopping. By nightfall on day 5, something inside him began to break. 5 days without real food. 5 days of cold. 5 days of pain. 5 days of contaminated meltwater. And now he'd watched rescue fly past him 3 times. How many more chances would he get? How long would they search? Alec stared up at the darkening sky. Stars were appearing, brilliant and cold and indifferent. His broken body was shutting down. The cold had penetrated so deep that he barely shivered anymore. Not a good sign. His thoughts were slow, disconnected. Day 6 was coming. and Alec Luhn had no way of knowing if he would survive to see day 7. The red flag on his hiking pole stirred in the night wind, a small defiant gesture against the vast emptiness. Somewhere, search teams were planning tomorrow's operations. But in the darkness, trapped in ice, Alec faced the most fundamental question. How much longer could he hold on? Dawn on day 6 arrived without ceremony. Alec Luhn opened his eyes, a small victory in itself. His body had crossed thresholds he didn't know existed. The shivering had stopped entirely, not because he was warm, but because his core temperature had dropped so low his muscles no longer had energy to generate heat. His lips were cracked and bleeding, his tongue swollen from dehydration, his hands so numb he could barely move his fingers. This is what the final stages look like. He'd stopped believing rescue would come. Hope was too expensive. It cost energy he didn't have. The morning passed in a blur. Time became meaningless. And then, around midday, he heard it again. The distant thump of helicopter rotors. His heart didn't race this time. He was too far gone for that, but somewhere deep in his failing system, some primitive part of his brain registered. Opportunity. The helicopter appeared, red and white, sweeping low across the glacier. But this time was different. This time they were flying lower. This time the weather was perfect. No clouds, no wind, unlimited visibility. Alec raised his arm, barely, just inches off the ground. But the red flag caught the light, just a flicker of color against gray rock and white ice. A tiny anomaly. The kind of detail trained rescue personnel are conditioned to investigate. The helicopter slowed, circled, then stopped, hovering directly above his position. They had seen him. The rotor wash kicked up snow and ice. A figure descended on a rescue cable, orange flight suit, helmet, professional comm. The rescuer touched down, assessed the situation with trained efficiency, and immediately radioed. "We have him. He's alive. Multiple injuries visible. Hypothermic. We need immediate medical evacuation." Alec tried to speak. His voice came out as a hoarse whisper. 6 days. I know. We've been looking for you. Can you tell me your name? Alec. Alec Luhn. Alec, I'm going to get you out of here. You're safe now. The rescuer deployed emergency thermal blankets, checked vitals, stabilized the fractures. A rescue stretcher descended on cables. They secured Alec in the basket, immobilizing his broken leg, protecting his spine. "You're one. Lucky man," the rescuer said as they prepared to lift. 6 days in these conditions. I don't remember ever finding someone alive after this long. Not in terrain like this. Alec's eyes filled with tears, not from pain, from the overwhelming, crushing relief of being found, of surviving. The cable tensed. The stretcher lifted. For 6 days, Alec had stared up at those ice walls, trapped. Now he was rising past them, ascending toward the helicopter. The glacier spread out beneath him. Vast, beautiful, deadly. From above, he could see how small his shelter had been, how perfectly hidden, how easily they could have missed him. They loaded him into the helicopter. Medical personnel began emergency treatment, IV lines, warming protocols, pain management. The helicopter lifted and turned, heading for the nearest hospital. Alec watched the glacier recede through the window. He was leaving it behind, but it would never leave him. When Alec Luhn was wheeled through the emergency doors, the medical staff saw immediately that this was salvage work, taking a body systematically broken and piecing it back together. The injury list was staggering: fractured left femur, multiple pelvic fractures, spinal compression fractures, severe hypothermia, core temperature 32.8 degrees Celsius, advanced dehydration with early kidney failure, malnutrition, frostbite on extremities. The trauma surgeon looked at the injuries, then at the rescue report. 6 days. You are extraordinarily lucky to be alive. Alec was in surgery within the hour. Orthopedic teams set and stabilized the femur. Pins, plates. The pelvic fractures would heal naturally, a process that would take months. He woke in a hospital bed, warm for the first time in a week. His wife arrived 2 days later. When she walked into his hospital room, Alec broke down completely. All the trauma he'd compartmentalized for 6 days came flooding out. The fear, the loneliness, the certainty he would die. The helicopters that passed over him, the storm, the cold, the pain. She held his hand and let him talk. Let him be human after 6 days of being reduced to nothing but the will to survive. Later, when he could speak without breaking, Alec tried to articulate what had happened. "It was silly," he said. "The whole thing. It was silly that I might die because I wanted to go on a cool hike, because my boots were failing and I didn't turn back, because I slipped on ice." His wife squeezed his hand. "That's how it happens in the mountains. Not with grand gestures, just small things that compound." Alec nodded. "I kept thinking about all my preparation, all my knowledge, and none of it mattered because I made one bad decision, kept going when I should have stopped. Recovery would be long, months of physical therapy, some nerve damage permanent. But Alec Luhn didn't die on Folgefonna Glacier. He survived. There is a moment in every survival story where too much confidence in either one can kill you. The thin line between life and death in nature is exactly that. Thin. It's measured in degrees of body temperature, in ounces of water, in the angle of a slope, in the integrity of a boot sole, in whether a helicopter pilot looks in the right direction at the critical moment. Alec made mistakes. The failing boots that should have triggered retreat. The decision to continue alone into technical terrain. The slip on ice. But he also did things right. He found shelter immediately, rationed water with discipline, stayed conscious when his body wanted to shut down, created a signal flag, and fought when fighting seemed pointless. And most importantly, he told people his rough itinerary. When he missed his flight, people knew to sound the alarm. That simple act is the difference between successful rescue and a body found months later. The mountain leaves marks on everyone who challenges it. Alec carries physical ones: a slight limp, leg pain in cold weather, nerve damage. But the deeper marks are psychological. He thinks differently about risk now, about margins of error, about how quickly competence can turn to catastrophe, about humility. The wilderness doesn't owe us anything. It simply exists. Beautiful, indifferent, and deadly. Alec returned to journalism after recovery, but he doesn't solo hike in remote terrain anymore. That appetite for solitude has been tempered by the memory of 6 days alone with nothing but pain and ice. He speaks occasionally about the experience, always with the same message: the mountain doesn't care. Prepare like it wants to kill you. Because it does. What separates survivors from victims? Preparation? Partly. Luck? Absolutely. Will? Perhaps most of all. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes all those things align perfectly, and people still die. Sometimes they don't align at all, and people survive. The mountain doesn't operate on fairness. It operates on physics and weather and the brutal mathematics of human physiology in extreme conditions. The red flag that saved Alec's life now sits in a box in his home. A piece of torn fabric. Nothing special, just a stuffed sack tied to a hiking pole. But it represents something larger, the human capacity to refuse defeat, to create hope from scraps, to wave a tiny banner of defiance at an uncaring universe, and somehow, impossibly, be seen. Somewhere in Norway, a glacier continues its slow creep down a mountain, and in a small depression between ice walls, meltwater flows through channels where a man once trapped himself and survived. The mountain remembers nothing, but we should. Because the next time someone walks into wild country, they carry the same risks Alec did, the same thin margins, the same question mark hanging over their return. The best tribute we can pay to stories like his is not to romanticize the adventure or glorify the survival. It's to learn, to prepare, to respect the wilderness for what it truly is. Not a playground, not a backdrop for transformation, but a force of nature that will test you and occasionally break you without malice or mercy. And if you're very lucky, it will let you leave, with scars to prove you were there, and wisdom earned in ice and pain, and the knowledge that you stood at the edge and somehow found your way back.